The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles should be proud of themselves. They put on an absolutely fantastic game of football last night in Super Bowl LVII. The NFL, however, should be ashamed of itself. In my opinion, what happened last night was a disgrace from the league's perspective. And we'll talk about that today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, this is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, February 13th, 2023, and I'm your host, John B. from GanggreenNation.com, thanking you for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. This podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you like what you see or hear, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source and enjoy the show, please give it a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. These things help out the podcast and help other Jets fans find Locked On Jets. And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs, for the second time in 4 years, are Super Bowl champions. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles last night, 38-35 in Super Bowl LVII, a fantastic game of football. As I said in our open, I think both the Chiefs and the Eagles should be congratulated on putting on an excellent game. Both teams had a tremendous season. It's a shame only one of those two teams could win the championship. But I left that game feeling very bad about the NFL. And that's the topic of today's show. I actually changed my mind. We're not talking about the Jets today. It's very rare that I don't talk about the Jets. I was going to have a completely different topic today, and we'll push that topic to later in the week. But I thought, and I'm not talking about the players on the field, and I'm not talking about either team. Again, congratulations to Kansas City. Great football team. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, their second championship together. Eagles, a phenomenal season, making it back to the Super Bowl. You know, just a couple of years after people were really questioning the direction of that organization. But no, instead, I want to talk about the NFL. Now, I have to be honest with you. In recent years, the Super Bowl has not been my favorite day because it's really not entirely about football. There are a lot of aspects I don't like about it. Part of it's that you go through the whole year doing things one way, and everything changes on Super Bowl Sunday. You know, you don't have either team at home. It's a neutral site game. The fans in attendance, for the most part, are not real fans. You know, they're sponsors, league sponsors who get tickets. It's not a real fan group attending the game. There are some fans who are able to attend, but it's not an accessible game. I mean, it's like $5,000 was the cheapest ticket I saw on the secondary ticket sites last week. It's tough for the real fans to get in. Even something as minor as the fact that you kick off at either 1 or 4:30 all season long, and then this kickoff goes to 6:30. You know, you got the longer halftime because you have the halftime show, and some of this is understandable. It's the league showcase game, and frankly, not everybody watching the Super Bowl is watching it because they're a football fan. The Super Bowl has become an event in the country. There are non-football fans, people who don't care about the game. The league has to try and entertain them, so that's why you have the halftime show. You know, that's why you have the commercials. You have all the extra commercials. So I understand that on some level you have to meet the league halfway, but there are a couple things about this game that really bothered me and left me feeling negative. And I should not feel negative because it was a great game of football, and unlike decades ago, we had a stretch a few decades back where like every Super Bowl was a blowout. Every Super Bowl was a terrible game. In recent years, I mean, almost every Super Bowl comes down to the final play. The only exception, the only game that I can think of in recent memory that was a blowout was the game 9 years ago when Seattle beat Denver. I think it was 43-8. So great football. But there are some things. If you left that game, I think you probably felt like the NFL cared more about production value, they cared about making it an event, than they cared about the actual football. Because, you know, even something as small as we take a commercial break, we come back for the coin toss, and then there's another commercial after the coin toss, but we can't kick off yet. We have to have a 5-minute Bradley Cooper montage. We have to have, Doug Williams hold up the Super Bowl trophy before we have the kickoff. And all of this, I guess, is fine in some respect. But when you're missing things that are so basic to the actual playing of the game, and I'm talking the officiating was terrible in this game. And it came down to a play that was, I think, objectively a bad call. Listen, I did not really care which team won in this game. It's not even like New England was in the Super Bowl where I'm clearly, all those years the Patriots were in the Super Bowl with Brady and Belichick. We had a rooting interest. We could root against them. In this game, I'm sure some of you have strong feelings about maybe Kansas City or Philadelphia, those teams. But I think most of us, we didn't really care as long as we got a good game. So I'm speaking objectively. I didn't really care which team won. It was a bad call. It was a call that extended the Kansas City drive, the final Kansas City drive, essentially allowed them to run out the clock and kick a field goal. And in honesty, I think that the reaction to that is going to be overblown from the standpoint that the Chiefs probably still win the game, even if the call is not made, even if that holding call is not made, because it's 4th down, but the Chiefs are still in chip shot field goal range. Harrison Buckner probably makes the field goal. I know he missed one earlier. I know the field was bad, which we'll get to. I'll get to that. But you got to think Buckner makes the kick. And yeah, the Eagles were playing great offense all night, and they very easily could have gotten to field goal range or scored a touchdown. But if the Chiefs take the lead with less than 2 minutes left, their odds of winning the game are very high. So I don't think you could say it necessarily dramatically changed the impact, but it changed the impact from the standpoint that the Eagles would have had a chance at least to tie the game. And it would have been very exciting to see Jalen Hurts get the ball back one last time. My issue with the call is more what's happened with instant replay in this league. Because instant replay, in my view, this is my view, the point of it is to prevent egregious calls from changing the trajectory of a big game. As much as anything, the point is supposed to be we're not going to have terrible calls that will dramatically impact a game. Even not just a big game, any game. Instead, what we got, and we got this multiple times in this game, we had like 5 to 10 minute delays because a ball slightly bobbled. Or did the guy maintain the catch to the ground? Did the ball move a little bit? And we spend 5 minutes looking through a microscope trying to figure this out, trying to overturn a catch. Yet, with the game, the Super Bowl, the championship of the league on the line, we have a blown call and we can't do anything about it. I understand the way the rules are set up for instant replay. They came in 1999. We had different technology in 99. And it's good that we got replay because in the 98 season and in years before it, we had critical games that were decided on bad calls. But we've gotten away from this. And now we've gotten to the point where we're spending, we're trying to reconstruct, we're spending hours, maybe not hours, but we're spending 10 minutes trying to reconstruct the literal rulebook definition of what is a catch. Meanwhile, a play that helps determine the championship game can't be reviewed. It makes no sense. And again, we have the technology. It's a very basic system the league could put in. You have 1 or 2 guys in a skybox, in the box, in the booth, who just review. You got all the camera angles accessible, and you have 40 seconds between plays. You just have them review it, and you have them buzz down. You have a headset. You have a direct line to the officials. You just say that was a bad call. Overturn it. And we don't need these 10-minute reviews. The only reasons the game should be stopped for an extensive review is something that could decide the game, something that will have an outsized impact in the game. Instead, we get these 10-minute reviews on these basic plays. Meanwhile, when the game is being decided, and in this case, a championship is being decided, we can't touch it. Explain the logic to me. How does the NFL, in the year 2023, in 99, maybe the technology was different. It is the year 2023, and the NFL can't get it right? The NFL has all the tools it needs to get it right. And bad calls happen. We've all seen big games get decided on bad calls in the past. It's something you have to live with. And again, there's a very good chance the Chiefs win this game anyway. And the Eagles missed some opportunities. I don't want to cry too much for the Eagles because they should have put that game away by halftime. And there were missed opportunities that they had. So I don't want to act like that decided the game. But in the context of the way we deal with replay, in the context of what replay is supposed to give us, in the context of what replay actually gives us, I don't know how the NFL lives with what happened in this game. And this game, the only thing I can say for this game is hopefully this is the wake-up call the league needs. And it should not have taken this long because this has been an issue for years, but hopefully this was the wake-up call the league needs to turn things around and actually install some rules that make sense. Instead of making us sit around forever for calls that just don't matter that much, actually have replay serve as a check and balance against potentially bad calls that cost a team everything. But that's not the only thing that was wrong with this game. And I had here on the Locked On Jets podcast, I'm not going to claim I'm an expert on groundskeeping, but how the NFL allowed that field to be like that in this game is something I just can't understand. We'll talk about it more as we continue this Monday episode of the Locked On Jets podcast. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in the way that you want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you. Therapy has many broad benefits. It helps you learn positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It is not just for those who have experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, you should know that BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time with no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. This show is free and available on all platforms. Super Bowl 57 is now complete. The 2022 NFL season is now officially complete. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. I was expecting it to be a shootout. It lived up to the hype. It was a great game. It left me with a negative feeling, though, not about the teams, but about the National Football League. In the first segment, I talked about the officiating and the rules that make no sense, that were completely exposed in this game. But even if we get past that, there's one aspect of this game that the league should just be completely embarrassed by, and that was the condition of this field. I talked in the first segment about how, I don't love the Super Bowl because it's so different from a regular game. I hate the idea that you end your season, you play your biggest game, and everything's so different. And one of the aspects of that is that neither team's at home. It's a neutral site game. It's predetermined in advance. They always try and put it in good climates or domes. And part of it's they try and reward cities that build new stadiums by giving them a Super Bowl. Now, one thing that's supposed to be a benefit of this is that the league is supposed to have complete control. And I don't know exactly when they take it over, but for weeks, the league is supposed to have complete control of the venue. So how then do you end up with a field condition like that, where guys are sliding all over the field, where guys on the Eagles have to change their cleats after the first quarter? That is an absolute disgrace. And I don't have a degree in turf management. Listen, I'm not an expert on the quality of the field. I'm not an expert on groundskeeping. That is an embarrassment to the league. And that is completely inexcusable as far as I'm concerned, because the NFL has limitless resources. There are some teams, there are some stadiums where, maybe there's an issue and it's just tough to fix it. The league they have control of the venue. So how do they not have a first-class turf? Even if this venue in Arizona has bad turf all season long, how do you not have a first-class field surface ready for this game? And this goes back to what I said. I think that, and this is just me speaking as a football fan, because I watch the Super Bowl because I'm a football fan. Other people watch it for different reasons. Other people may watch it for the halftime show. Other people may watch it for the commercials. Other people may watch it to go to Super Bowl parties, hang with friends, family. I don't think there's a bad reason to watch the Super Bowl. But the NFL, in this game, and I think I speak for a lot of football fans, I think the football fan does not care about all the other stuff that much. I'll get over the fact it's a weird kickoff time. I'll get over the fact it's a neutral site. I can get over all that. If your first focus, if the most important thing to you is making sure you're doing everything you can to keep the caliber of the game high. Because those players sure did. Those players went out there and played their hearts out and gave us a great game. They gave us a great performance. And the NFL did not deliver their end. The NFL gave you, and this is, I don't know if it's fair or not, but I'm telling you the impression I got. I got the impression the NFL was more concerned about making this a production event than it was making sure they had the best football game possible. I can get over, the long halftime. Again, I don't love that because halftime's halftime, and suddenly in the biggest game of the year, it's longer because we have the Super Bowl halftime show. I can get over that if you are doing everything in your power to make sure the caliber of the game is top notch. Can you tell me the NFL did that with the condition of that field when you had guys slipping all over the place? In fact, it's funny because as I was watching the game, my biggest fear was not that the game would be decided on a blown call. My biggest fear was that the game would be decided by somebody slipping, somebody sliding. And when Harrison Buckner was lining up for that field goal, I thought the only thing that could make this worse, we watched this great game possibly, to some extent at least, get decided on a suspect call. Again, very easy to overstate how big of an impact that call had, but we watched this game that, at least on some level, was determined by a call that was very suspect, that holding call. The only thing that could make this worse is if this guy misses this field goal because he slips on that turf. It just makes no sense to me. You guys picked this venue out. I understand that they don't pick the venue out because of the caliber of the field, but again, this league, that part of the reason they're doing it is to make money. Part of the reason you see all this extra stuff is because it's such a moneymaker for the league. To not have a first-class field, and then the halftime show comes in, and the field apparently gets worse. They have to replace divots at halftime. It's disgraceful. It's embarrassing. I can't get over this. And I don't know that one team got the worst end of it. I don't think the Eagles lost because the field was in bad condition. But this is supposed to be your biggest game. And it seems like you care about everything except the actual football on the field. That's the feeling I get. Maybe that's not how it went for the NFL, but did nobody in the lead up to this game realize the condition that field was in? And the football was still top notch. The football, I thought the performance of both teams was very good. And I really enjoyed the game. And that's one of the things that frustrates me is that the football players delivered their end. The football players were first rate in this game. The NFL looked like a not even a second-rate outfit. I'm not even sure they looked like a third-rate outfit. The way the NFL conducted itself in the setting up of this game, in the performance of this game, the league did itself no favors. And part of the problem is that the NFL right now is a monopoly, that there's nobody there to compete with them. I really think that if there were a bunch of billionaires who got together, who wanted to put together a better league, the NFL would be in trouble because this product is just unacceptable. And the NFL right now is dominating because there's no alternative. All the other minor leagues, don't really have enough money behind them. They can't get the best players. The NFL would. I think the NFL is right. I think the NFL is more ripe for a challenge than people realize. I think if you got some and then you need a lot of money, you need guys who are billionaires, but you can't tell me that there's no way to put on a better product than what the league did here. The league did its fans no favors in this game. They did not show respect for their fans. Again, it feels that this league's more focused on a Bradley Cooper introduction video of showing all the players as like it's an infomercial, delaying the kickoff, by the way, while they're doing this, than they are about making sure the football's top notch. I can live with all the other stuff. I can live with the 5-hour pregame show. I can live with the 6:30 kickoff. I can live with the neutral site. Because part of the reason I'm supposed to live with the neutral site is that the field's supposed to actually be functional. You'd think at least. But the NFL really looks awful, in my opinion. I think the league should not be proud of itself today. I think the league should be proud of the players. The league should be proud of the coaches. The league should be ashamed of itself because this was I'm saying this was a third-rate effort, maybe giving the league too much credit. A disgraceful performance by the National Football League in this game. So let's end the show by talking about something better. The football was really good. And as we close out this Monday edition of the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about some of the highlights from this game because there were a lot of them. This episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. Of course, the Super Bowl is over. That means we don't have any more NFL to watch, at least until the fall. But we're at the midway point of the NBA season, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, even threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, the day after the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl got me so fired up that I'm actually not talking about the Jets today. It's a rare day here on Locked On Jets. The NFL's performance subpar. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, on the other hand, gave us an excellent game of football. And, I think you could start with the two quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes wins his second Super Bowl MVP. Jalen Hurts, 3 rushing touchdowns in the game. It's all about the quarterback. It's not all about the quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks are where you start, and both of them absolutely delivered. I thought really great performance, really good performance by both of them. But the Eagles, I thought, missed an opportunity, because if you watch that game, the Eagles completely dominated the first half, and that's the reason I don't want to go too I want to go crazy on the call that was made, because the NFL is completely illogical in its rules with replay and all that stuff. I don't want to go crazy with the call because the Eagles could have put this game away by halftime. And I think the big play you look back on is the Jalen Hurts fumble that was returned for a touchdown. And I don't want to get too hard on Hurts because he was very good otherwise. And again, he scored 3 touchdowns. In fact, at a point where it felt like the Eagles were on the ropes in the fourth quarter, he led them to a touchdown drive and scored not only a touchdown, he showed some tough running on a 2-point conversion. So great job by Jalen Hurts. Mahomes clearly playing hurt. This was not the best Mahomes, but he was good enough. And, especially, he had a critical scramble where he was clearly hobbling around out there. Really good performance by Mahomes. I think the Kansas City run game also deserves some respect in this game. They ran for over 150 yards. And starting out that second half, they were down 10. And it felt to me like they really got things going. They really got their momentum going because of the run game. They were able to run it outside. Their offensive line started controlling things on the inside. So I think the Kansas City run game was kind of the unsung hero in the game. Mahomes won the MVP, but the Chiefs got rolling in the second half because they were able to run the football effectively, and I think they were able to control the line of scrimmage against the Philadelphia defense. And also, a tremendous run by Kadarius Toney. It was a punt return. It was a bad punt by the Eagles, and they didn't cover it that well, but Kadarius Toney broke a huge punt return in the second half that kind of set the Chiefs up for a huge score, a score that ended up being very important to them. So, and the game was just back and forth. I think it's starting this game, you were expecting a shootout because of these offenses, because you had Mahomes at quarterback for the Chiefs, and because the Eagles just have so much talent. A.J. Brown had a good game. Devontae Smith had a good game. Dallas Goedert. The Eagles receivers all playing well in this game. It was back and forth. It was everything you wanted it to be. And it did not feel like it was going to be that way at halftime. Again, I kind of got the feeling that the Eagles were in control of the game. And I felt that first drive of the second half was really important for the Chiefs because they were reeling at that point. Their offense, and I think Michael Strahan made a really good point at halftime, the Eagles controlled the time of possession in the first half. And although I think time of possession can be overrated, it had an impact on the Chiefs because that Kansas City offense just could never get into a rhythm. When you're sitting on the sideline for a long time, and you have to remember, the Super Bowl, you have extra commercials, there are longer timeouts, the halftime's longer. So when the other team has the ball, you're really sitting on the bench for a long time, and it prevents you from getting into a rhythm. And then second half came, the Chiefs were able to get into a rhythm, and they were able to move the ball effectively and do what they needed to do. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, now 2-time champions. When we talk about the iconic duos of the sport, they're rising. They're moving up, and Mahomes continues to impress. Mahomes continues to build a case. He's still not. Here talk about him being the greatest of all time. I don't think we're quite there yet, but he's on that trajectory. He's got his second Super Bowl. He and Andy Reid now together are becoming one of the iconic duos in the game. And Philadelphia Eagles, a tough loss. They just won the Super Bowl back in 2017. They had a chance to do it again. It would have been their second championship in 6 seasons, second championship in 5 years after a long wait. Prior to 17, last time they had won a championship was 1960. They fall a little bit short. I'm sure a very painful loss for them, but they gave us a very entertaining game. They played a great game of football and had a fantastic season. In some ways, it was a great way to see the NFL season end. In other ways, it was disappointing. The disappointment was really provided by the league, who just continues to show that they're not focused on the fans. And that's what it comes down to with the NFL. But again, I don't want to take away from these teams. These teams, The players did what they could. The coaches did what they could. Even if the league did not give us what we deserved as fans, the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles so did. And that thus ends the NFL season. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. These things help the channel out and help other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll talk more Jets.